So, the 14th Dalai Lama, in a sense, these quotes present the importance of this reasoning. The reasoning of dependent arising. Why it's so important. If things were not so, the accusation that Nagarjuna presents to himself, hypothetical one, well, I don't know. I guess not hypothetical. He's heard it. That things need to exist from their own side. Otherwise, everything would be figments of the imagination. And we couldn't posit cause and effect. We couldn't posit the attainment of nirvana. We couldn't posit karma. We couldn't posit rebirth. And he answers back that if things were inherently existent, then cause and effect would be impossible. The three jewels would be impossible. Cyclic existence would be impossible. Nirvana would be impossible. And as the Dalai Lama often puts it, good and bad would be impossible. In other words, when he says good and bad, usually he follows that up with talking about the helpful and the unhelpful would be impossible. Pleasure and pain. So, the cause and effect of favorable and unfavorable phenomena toward the end of that quote. Favorable, unfavorable. The things favorable is what helps, unfavorable what harms. And he usually adds, there's no way that these can be denied. We cannot deny birth, aging, sickness, and death. Since this is the case, the absence of inherent existence, I wonder why the word also is there. Also definitely should be asserted. Pleasure and pain, favorable and unfavorable, cause and effect are asserted. So on top of that, or behind all of that, we have to assert the absence of inherent existence. So he goes on to say, the objector, I guess that's people like us, have not understood well the meaning of the emptiness of inherent existence. And then after the question, this provocative sentence, emptiness has the meaning of dependent arising. And I think the whole rest of this book probes this issue. And one of the best chapters is his own exposition of this. Okay. To prove that things are empty of inherent existence, Nagarjuna uses the reason that they are dependent arisings. And this is what we're going to explore first. And today, if we get to that point, we're going to skip over the quote from Tsong-kha-pa and go directly to the fleshing out of that quote from the 4 annotations, which is just after it. We're not going to go over it twice, once without the annotations and then once with the annotations, as we did last time, for those who remember so vividly how we did it last time. Ha ha. And we'll jump immediately to the 4 annotations. In other words, it's too much to go over Tsong-kha-pa's text once without the annotations and a second time with the annotations. So we're going to jump to the annotations, annotated version, which is a fuller text. And I'll also point out that I give in the notes the translation from where you can find the translation from the New Jersey group. And I recommend you take a look at it, because you may find it a good deal easier to read. And think, oh my, with these annotations don't help. It's a lot easier to read without all this other stuff. And that may help. You see, it may help you to get into it. And even when you may think, oh, well, I'll go back and read Jeffrey's version without the annotations. Please do, at your leisure. And you may think, oh, this is too little. And the annotations is too much. And the New Jersey version is sort of in the middle. It's been gone over by an editor who's made it smoother. And yes, try all 3. Anything to get into it. Anything to get into it. And we're going to do slow reading, maybe to put you to sleep, with the most complicated version with the annotations. That's the one we're going to try to get through. Why? To pull us into how to meditate. The aim is how to put it into practice, to draw us into how to practice it. The annotations, it's called 4 annotations, which at this point in the text are only 2 annotations. There, when we get to them, but I'm keying you up to jump to that section prior to next week. There are headings, 9 headings. 9 headings on page 177. 177 of the text you have. There are 9 headings. Those are from Jamyang Sheba, and doesn't make any difference, but he's from Gomang, and he provides only the headings. But the headings are very helpful, extremely helpful. They announce what Tsong-kha-pa is doing. And then the material that's added beyond what Tsong-kha-pa says are from a scholar from Sarah Che. Dradi Geshe Rinchen Tundrup. And that's about all I know of Dradi Geshe Rinchen Tundrup, even though I've used his commentary really. I forget what the if it's the same commentary or not, a lot. And if any of you know a story about Dati Geshe Rinchen Tundrup of Sarah J, please provide it. Obviously a wonderful scholar. So the fleshing out of the individual sentences is done by him. So the combination of those, of the annotations by those two scholars really are very helpful. So, back to what we're reading here.
Jeff, could
yes.
you just tell us where the Tsong-kha-pa portion is without the annotations? Is it that one paragraph, or where is it?
It's down below in issue 26. It begins with furthermore. It's furthermore, in accordance with the statements in the 7th chapter. So to prove that things are empty of inherent existence, Nagarjuna uses the reason that they are dependent arisings. And that's what Tsong-kha-pa expands on in this part that we're going to jump and go to the more fulsome treatment on page 177. He does not use as a reason. Now Tsong-kha-pa's punching at us, and he's jumping on those who see the middle way school as proving that things do not have the capacity to perform functions, that things do not exist at all. He does not use as a reason that things are utterly devoid of the capacity to perform functions. So things are empty, impermanent things, effective things are empty, but nevertheless they can perform functions. So, as we've been saying in studying, figuring out how to meditate on going and coming, we want to develop the reasoning that sees the utter emptiness, the utter absence. We want to arrive at a psychological state of a mere absence of inherent existence. Just seeing that, of just getting the message of the absence of inherent existence, and then in a state subsequent to that meditative equipoise, seeing phenomena as like a magician's illusions, in that they appear to inherently exist but don't inherently exist. And within that context are effective. Thus, we're not trying to see that now the magician's illusion appears to be a cup of coffee, but isn't a cup of coffee. And whereas the actual cup of coffee The point isn't that it appears to be an actual cup of coffee, but isn't an actual cup of coffee. Rather, it's like a magician's illusion in that it appears to inherently exist, but doesn't inherently exist. That's why it's like a magician's illusion, not that it is an illusion. And that's admittedly hard, because you're searching for something and you're finding only a non-finding in that experience. And it's easy to take it that you're finding the non-existence. Because it can certainly seem like that, because what you're looking for is this thing you're usually experiencing. So you're seeing an utter absence of an appearance that's blended with the actual appearance of the object. So it's very easy to slip to going too far. But that the absence that you're finding doesn't cancel the actual object, even though it's an utter absence. Wow. He does not use as a reason that things are utterly devoid of the capacity to perform functions. Far from that. Dependent arising is asserted, and it is used as the reason proving that things are empty of inherent existence. So you see, you're using as the reason proving that things are empty of inherent existence. You're using dependent arising itself. Here in the essence of eloquence, Tsong-kha-pa similarly adds, thereby Nagarjuna speaks of the meaning of the emptiness of inherent existence as the meaning of dependent arising. Now notice, this is a little different. Up above, emptiness has the meaning of dependent, well, no, that's the same. Emptiness of inherent existence has the meaning of dependent, well, no, it is the opposite. Emptiness of inherent existence, no, it is the same or the opposite. Emptiness has the meaning of dependent, no, it's the same. Saying that within a non-emptiness of inherent existence, the dependent arisings of production and disintegration are not suitable, whereby due to which all presentations are not findable. Wow, I can rock back and forth in this chair. But in the position of the emptiness of inherent existence, all those are very feasible. As Nagarjuna says, what is more amazing than this?
Jeffrey, can
Yeah.
I ask a question?
Yeah.
I almost feel like I get a sense of some of this, but I'm curious if you could expand on the difference between what you just said about the difference between non-finding and non-existence.
Oh,
You
so
said
the
we find
non-finding
only-
is the non-finding of the non-existence of inherent existence.
down, please.
Yes. The non-finding in this case is a finding of the non-existence of inherent existence. The finding of the non-finding, you see, is you're not finding inherent existence.
Right.
So you are finding a non-existence, but it's the non-existence of inherent existence.
Oh, not complete non-existence.
Yeah, so for instance, if I search for my body, it's very interesting. If I search for my body and under ultimate analysis and don't find it, actually the non-finding of the body, of my body, in that case, is a non-finding. I mean, you're not finding the body. And what is that? It's a non-finding of, it's the finding of the absence or the non-existence of the inherent existence of the body.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Helpful.
Well, what aren't you finding? You're not finding the body. Tsong-kha-pa says that clearly in the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. In his example, you're searching for a pot, and he says you're not finding the pot. And that means you're not finding the inherent, you are finding the absence of the existence of the inherent existence of the pot, but you're not finding the pot. When you search for your body and you don't find it, what are you not finding? You're not finding your body. Why? Because what were you searching for? The inherent existence of the body. Pumbaa Manyeba. He says, Pumbaa Manyeba, Pumbaa Mebar Nyeba Mare. Doesn't mean you're finding the non-existence of the body. But you are not finding Pumbaa. Thereby, Nagarjuna speaks of the meaning of the emptiness of inherent existence as the meaning. Thereby, Nagarjuna speaks of the meaning of the emptiness of inherent existence as the meaning of dependent arising. Oh, we already read that. Okay. There, through this reasoned approach, Nagarjuna is taken as demonstrating that. Now, when you read these pages, notice where the margin is. Hopkins is at the margin. Something's being quoted, a half an inch in or whatever it is. Hopkins is at the margin. At some point you can easily get lost. But if you note how much over at the margin Hopkins is, through this reasoned approach, Nagarjuna is taken as demonstrating that the Perfection Wisdom Sutras can be taken literally in their presentation of all. Essence of Eloquence is a treatise on the definitive, the interpretable, and the definitive. Can be taken literally in their presentation of all phenomena as lacking inherent existence. and lacking any other reason why the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras might require interpretation, and lacking any other reason, this goes forward, and lacking any other reason why they might require interpretation, they are definitive. Texts speaking otherwise require interpretation. Now, it's not sufficient that for a text to be definitive, that they be merely literal. They have to be literal, and they have to be setting forth emptiness, the lack of inherent existence. Otherwise, even if they're literal, they require interpretation to find out emptiness. Or if they set forth some other kind of emptiness, then those, in their literal, they'll require interpretation. So, the essence of eloquence says the same thing. So then, typical to these books, I make up issues. This is issue number 26 in this book. Prior to it, there have been 25 issues about, all sorts of things. That's how I niftily get around. What we say, topics related to the interpretable and the definitive. How could the meaning of emptiness, a mere absence of inherent existence, a mere voidness, be the meaning of dependent arising? Certainly not a mere absence. Although emptiness itself is a dependent arising in Tsong-kha-pa's system, so there is a dependent arising that is a mere absence. But that wouldn't make dependent arising in general a mere absence. To explore how the meaning of emptiness could be the meaning of dependent arising, actually, and vice versa. It is helpful first to understanding how dependent arising is used as a sign. See, sign means reason also. In Tibetan it's da. In Sanskrit it's linga. Linga also, means what? The sex signs. What's the sign of being a male or a female? Linga. And street sign. What's the sign, sign of being on this road or that road? The sign of being a compassionate person or not, right? And we used to try to get around this word sign because it's just a little bit hard to get used to. And then, of course, finally, because there are other words that are there are synonyms, Dinzik, we decided, well, we'll call that reason. Rikpa, reasoning. Do we have more than 3? Da, Dinzik, Rikpa. And we needed to have a different word for every one, at least for technical translations. Tsong-kha lays out this process in the great exposition stages of the path, and that's why this is being used here. And the dependent arising is called the monarch of reasonings. And I used to translate this in a sexist way as the king. Rick Bag Yelbo. There's no reason to call it the king, you know? Of course you wouldn't call it the queen. Well, why not? And the non-sexist term is monarch. So, the word thing, ngöbo, is used loosely to refer to all phenomena, any phenomena, whether impermanent or permanent. And to avoid using the word impermanent for, saying impermanent things and permanent things, because for a very definite reason, because otherwise, in its more, well, any word you're going to tack onto it is going to run into problems, but you run into less problems by using effective and non-effective. And so eventually I chose when it's means merely impermanent, effective, having effects. In its more narrow meaning, I tack on the word effective. Here it's the more narrow meaning for impermanent or effective things. Even in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the word bhava or ngöbo is used for all things, all phenomena. But here, first one proves effective things as being without inherent existence, and then extends this realization to non-effective things. Tsong-kha-pa's explanation of this in his middle-length exposition of the stages of the path, I give the pages where this is set out. In Tsong-kha-pa's final exposition of the stages of the path, final exposition of wisdom, I give those pages a little bit later on, or maybe in this note. Citation of high sayings. Actually, the word here is long, and nowadays sungrap, as you've gotten used to, I translate as high sayings, and this is long, which I'm translating as scriptures. It is agama, and I believe I've already asked you. Agama, etymologically, Giant Shiva points out somewhere, and I haven't found it, means coming. And he has a very nice explanation, a very nice contextual etymology for agama lung as meaning coming, and I haven't been able to find it. If anyone knows of an etymology of agama as coming, it would be easy enough for us to make up one. But I've changed the high sayings here to citation of scriptures. Now, so this is the first of the 9 sections. So here's Nagarjuna using dependent arising as a reason proving emptiness. That which arises dependent upon cause and conditions is empty and quiescent by its own nature, in and of itself. Chandakirti. Now, Chandakirti fleshes out dependence as number one, dependence on causes and conditions, and then fleshes it out more as production from self, other, both and neither. The reasoning of dependent arising can be too short. For instance, this reasoning goes on to talk about a sprout. So let's decide that we won't talk about sprouts, but we'll talk about something a bit more palpable, like I like to use my body. My body even though I'm 78 years old and, get a lot of trouble from it, and I need an $800 ergonomic chair, even if somebody's throwing it away. Vancouver is this thriving place, and everybody wants to throw something away, replace it. My body does not inherently exist because of being a dependent arising. Because of arising dependent on causes and conditions. One thing I like to think about, because I do remember being in the crib, and my parents, after they got together and they lived in separate bedrooms, and I didn't at the time know what they were doing when they got together in the morning, but at a certain point they would call me in from my crib, and I would climb up over the crib and come, they'd say, okay, you can come in now. And, I heard the blah, 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 and I would climb up over the crib was pulled up. I would climb up over it and climb down and come in between them. And of course later I figured out what they were doing prior to their letting me come in and then fall asleep between them. So what I like to think of also is arising in dependence upon the stuff in my body arose, this body, in dependence upon the semen and egg inside my mother's body. It's an interesting, this, no matter how short I am, whatever, short, but, no matter how big I am, it arose in dependence upon this squishy thing inside her womb. That later, when I was this big, about this big, and was able to get up out of my crib. She didn't have to come in and let down the thing, that slides up and down. I was agile. No wonder I became a wrestler. And that, not too long before that, I was this, this body was this squishy thing, right? And my consciousness was in the middle of that. So, this really takes the causes and conditions and makes, it's a really, it's a startling, and then it gives a sense of, all the food and this and that. So, bring dependent arising to life. This reason of the arising of such and such an effect depends on certain causes and conditions, you see? Something that brings that to life. Cuts through all the nets of bad views, he says bad. That things, for instance, are produced from, and then, wow, he enlarges it from self, other, and so forth means both and neither. You mean I've got to look into that? Fantastic. When asked statement that effective things such as my body, wherever we get sprouts, sprouts gets you into sprouts. Well, we changed it to stalks, right? We changed sprouts to stalks. Stalks. As far as the book goes, right? Well, but as far as our meditation goes, my body, I don't mean Jeffrey's body. I mean your body. A huge forehead. The independence upon the sign of the elimination of pitfalls. Pitfalls, the word in Tibetan is kulsa. Kulsa, sa is place. Kul means these are places of going wrong. Pitfalls, you see, could bring up all sorts of things in the mind. Pitfalls is places of going wrong. Elimination of pitfalls with regard to the view. Places of going wrong. Places of straying, but curl. Places of going wrong is what it means. But pitfalls, then you can backwards read that into pitfalls. But this doesn't mean, like cliffs, falls, that kind of falls. The Kosa doesn't mean that. It's like coming to forks in the road and taking the wrong fork. But this is coming to a place where there are a whole lot of, no, it doesn't mean that one. It means this one. Places of going wrong. A whole lot of, where there are a whole lot of wrong turns. Wrong turns. The elimination of wrong turns with regard to the kosa. Place sa, you see, is place. It's not the cliffs. There are plenty of words for that. Not plenty of. That term comes up a lot. Different term. With regard to the view, is very clear in aspect and easily dawns to your awareness. Well, very clear in aspect when you hence, I will speak in brief. Well, yeah, it is sort of brief. I don't know if he's just, I'll speak here about the procedure of the reasoning of a dependent arising. And, Venerable, you're right in terms of what he refers to, the extremes of superimposition and deprecation, which are described as like the cliffs where you can fall down, and when you fall down, you fall down and over the cliff, and by falling down you you fall down over the cliff. But Kosa itself is not that image. Um, well, this is Hopkins at the margin. Don't believe him. But the Kosa he himself describes it that way. Anyway, we'll stop right there and go on from this point. So it's these are the scriptures behind this, and then he's going to set out the syllogism that's used in the meditation, and explains in detail about the syllogism to draw us in and show us how to flesh it out. It's a beautiful way to draw one into the meditation.